Talktainmentradio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, 3MR Production, its ownership, management, or staff.
We've got the power.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Independent Compensatory Code System Concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
This is The Compensatory Concept, of course, with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, radio the way it should be heard. There's so much going on until we're just happy to have Mr. Fuller here so that we can get some of this straightened out. All right, and that's what we're trying to do, is get some of this straightened out. And we've got a lot to get straightened out. I've got a guest joining Mr. Fuller. She does a show called Spirit. Her name is Donnella Braddox, and she is a dynamite personage. Did I say that right, Donnella?
Personages. No, oh my God, I'm like you now. Let's just scrap it. Person.
All right. Brother Kahari. Okay. And that happens sometimes. But I'm Brother Kahari, and of course, joining me every week at this time at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time is Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and he's the author of two what we call definitive works, Donnella, on racism, how it works, how it functions under its current construct, and and what Mr. Fuller says is that there's really only one functional system like that, and that's called white supremacy. Some have been using terms like black supremacy, yellow supremacy, red supremacy, and others. Mr. Fuller says that there's only one, and that's white supremacy. So you'll get a chance, Donnella, to ask Mr. Fuller some questions as well as others. But let's bring him in right now. He has certainly been on the I like to say battlefield for a long time, as I have, but he has been there longer and steadier and staying focused. And Mr. Fuller, I think, has influenced, from what I can see, lots of thinking around the world, and especially in this area of the world called the United States. So let's bring in Mr. Fuller. How are you doing, sir?
I'm still learning.
Mr. Fuller, can you tell us the names of your two definitive works and how we may purchase those works?
Yes. The basic title is The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. That's the basic title for both books. The basic book is a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and/or action for victims of racism. It's designed to be addressed to the individual person, any person anywhere on the planet who perceives him or herself to be a victim of racism, either directly or indirectly, in any one or more of the areas of activity. And I say that there are 9: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And this would, of course, be people who are classified as non-white, black, and or non-white. And the books are addressed to the individual person, about what the individual person can think about and then speak about, and how to go about speaking about it, some suggestions, and some suggestions that hopefully will work about what he or she as an individual person can do about it. And the second book is just an extension of the first book, which is a word guide that talks about what words to look for, because the glue that holds a system of white supremacy together is usually in the way language is used. And this is something that people do every day all over the world. They use language. They have things to say to each other. So the way things are said will formulate how people will think, or rather speak, because they'll use words when they speak. And then that will have something to do with how they will think and will result in how they will act. Now, the books can be obtained by punching up on your computer the word tiny, Tiny, .cc/Fuller in capital letters. That's tiny, .cc/forward Fuller in capital letters.
Okay, let's get right to it. Mr. Fuller, we're heading into about 2 more weeks left in this political season, and I guess that's the best way to put it when you think about it. It is like a political season. We've got about 2 more weeks left into this. What words are you hearing? I'm sure you've watched all the debates, as I have, and I don't know if Donella has had a chance to watch them all, but I certainly have had a chance to watch them all. In fact, participated in one nationally, so I had a chance to really sit there and watch the reactions of others. In fact, I was the only African American in that group.
Wow.
The MSNBC, yeah, I was the only one. So that was quite interesting. But Mr. Fuller, there are key words that you may have seen or heard, or that may have struck you, or what are some of those phrasings or language that you've heard that's kind of, because you wrote a book on key trigger words that, trigger certain things. What were some of the words that you heard or saw that really triggered some things in your thinking, Mr. Fuller?
Well, usually during what they call, quote-unquote, the political season, people trying to get elected, you usually hear the same words. That is forward, not backward, that we need changes, and we need something better than what we have. And usually there's this in the forms of slogans. And then when people get into specifics, even these specifics are very broad for the most part. I mean, we have got to have greater leadership. You'll hear terms like that. We have to have a more competent leadership. We have to have people who are more astute at what they go about doing. You hear all kinds of things said. I mean, every type of word you can name that has to do with, words like my opponent, and you have words like, well, we need to have a better foreign policy, words like we need to do something about the economy, and all of the areas of activity. We need to do something about the conflicts between and the differences between the sexes when it comes to employment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and that women should get equal pay for equal work. But these are mostly just slogans, and the average person is just listening to a series of slogans, and you hear some details, and the details become somewhat confusing because they become contradictory over a period of time during a long campaign. So you look for all of these words, and you more or less just walk away, like I think a lot of people are doing, and just saying, well, I'll just make up my mind based on the person that I think will do the most for me, one way or another, because all of them sound alike. They all sound alike. They're all for me. They're all going to do something for me. They're all going to solve all of my problems. And so that's what they're saying. I think that's the way the average person would look at it. That's certainly what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing from all candidates, regardless of where they are or what their position is, that they are problem solvers, and that they're going. And if they are elected, they will solve my problems, whatever those problems are.
Mm-hmm.
They have some way that they're going to solve my problem. And I don't think any person running for office will say, well, that's one problem that I can't do anything about, and I don't intend to do anything about it. I haven't heard a candidate say that yet. They all will say, I will solve your problem, whatever it is. If you want to go to the moon, I'll see to it you get there. I mean, but they don't get that specific, but they imply that.
Mm-hmm.
So you just listen, and people vote accordingly, and usually the way that I think this particular election is going to, the way it's going to result, what the results are going to be based on what people think about the individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And what they think those individuals might do along racial lines. And that's the conclusion I've come to.
Donella, would you say you've reached that same conclusion, that race or racial lines? Because one could say that race has always been there, because even when you had white men running, that's still race. So you think there's any difference in this racial thing now than it would have been 6 years ago or 8 years ago, Donella?
Well, I think definitely race is always a part of it. And I think if anything, the fact that Obama is black, it's actually made black people more interested. Because 8 years ago, I don't think there were too many black people, talking about, oh, did you watch the debate? So it's drawn us in. But yes, of course, we're thinking Obama's a black man. And, so I'm going to vote for him not only because he looks like me, but because, I'm definitely out for my own interests. Mm-hmm. Whether or not we truly believe that the presidency has the power to affect our personal lives, whether we believe that or not, race is always an issue.
It's always an issue. Mr. Fuller, as we look at this race thing, what is it that you are seeing racially that makes you begin to wonder about which way this thing will go, Mr. Fuller?
Oh, everything will be done on the basis of color. Everything, not some things. Every area of activity. You name anything that people are talking about, whether it's the educational system, you're talking about color. If you mention economics, you're talking about color. What people are going to have what jobs? How many, quote, unquote, so-called Latinos, Hispanics, are going to have what jobs? Are going to be allowed to come across the border seeking a quote-unquote better life? And that's all on the basis of color. We got, they say, the browning of North America. That's a cliche that's sometimes used. And what that means, what the significance means. And people will say how many white men are going to be allowed to work where, making how much money, and how many white women. And then what are you going to do about the black females who are coming out of college? So it's all about race, whether you're talking about economics, education, entertainment, labor, which we're talking about work. People do go to work and whatnot, so that's connected with economics and all like that. In fact, all of the areas of activity are interconnected. And then you talk about the sexual revolution and the new classifications and whatnot, and men marrying men and all like that. And that's all connected with race, because I say that you have more sexual confusion now on account of the race issue, and that the racists have decided that they're going to maximize the confusion among the sexes so that it will have a adverse effect among the non-white people worldwide. And one way you can definitely do that is by what you have. You can have gender obliteration among non-white people, which is what is going on worldwide. That is a key part of their strategy. They can do a lot of damage with that without even touching anything else, just with that alone. once you get the sexuality of people confused, you have defeated them. Once people don't know what sex they belong to, or don't care one way or another, and just everything goes, anything goes, mix and match anything, grandmothers, grandchild, whomever, mix and match. Sex is non-existent, because if you say that it exists, you're discriminating. And they are doing this among the dark-skinned people of the world, even though they are using white people to pioneer it, like they always do. That's to get it started, just like they did with the drug thing and all like that. They start off, saying that this is a white thing, and more or less, and even black people were saying that. But then, when the spillover happens, it has the greatest and most devastating effect on the non-white people of the planet. And they have just about successfully pulled that off, because everybody's bought into it. And that is gender obliteration. That's the heading. You can put it under a number of headings, but that's one of them. That's one of them that I made up.
Yeah, they call it.
That's exactly what it is. I say it's gender obliteration. What they're really saying is gender does not matter. And in about 5 or 10 years, anybody who says, well, there is such a thing as a male and a female, they'll say, oh, you're biased. You're crazy. You're saying, you're making a difference between a male and a female? Are you crazy? There is no difference. That's all imaginary. It's all the same thing. Everybody is transgender. There is no such thing as gender. Somebody made that up. That's what they'll be saying to the dark-skinned people of the world. And once you get them on that track, then you can start, what will be the benefits? Well, for one thing, you can say, well, we have a masculinized black female now. We can put her into a military uniform. We can take her husband, which will also be a female, and they will go off blissfully to the battlefield, and we can get rid of a whole bunch of them and make a whole lot of profit off of them just on the battlefields. We'll have them do the fighting. A couple of black females, arm in arm, and they're right there in the barracks with each other. They won't be going AWL looking for their mate, because their mate will be right there with them, side by side in the trenches with a gun. And they'll be killing our enemies, which will be other non-white people. And that's the kind of world that we want. We'll be right on track. And they'll just, and we will pay them plenty of money to do that. And they won't be having a lot of babies, because, after all, it's two females. They don't produce babies. And they love each other. And they will be in uniform, and that will be the jobs that we will make real easy for them to get, putting them in the military. We started that off a long time ago, and then we start saying, okay, you won't have a husband, you won't have children, but you'll have the love of your life right alongside of you, and you'll both die in the trench.
Mr. Fuller, stay right there. Donella, stay right there. More to come on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
Keys to Victory, a financial empowerment event. Financial strategies to thrive, not just survive. Respected experts and professionals will share practical information and insights as they demonstrate keys to financial victory. To register for this free event, contact Sanctuary Law Institute at 614-937-7974 or projectjubilee@gmail.com. Space is limited. Register now. Saturday, November 17th, 3 p.m. Where? Trinity United Church of Christ, 1180 Shanley Drive. Learn about keys to victory, credit rehab, dealing with creditors, lenders, understanding child support. Register now. Saturday, November 17th, 3 p.m. For more information, contact Sanctuary Law Institute at 614 404-937-7974 or projectjubilee@gmail.com. Space is limited. Register now.
There are Volkswagen dealers, and there's Hatfield Volkswagen, featuring the 2013 Jetta for only $159 a month, and Motor Trend's Car of the Year, the 2013 Passat. Our service staff keeps your Volkswagen performing at its best, whether it's our carefree maintenance program or our 30-minute express oil change. And Hatfield Volkswagen offers fine pre-owned cars starting at $5,000. Mention Talktainment Radio for a free car wash. Experience the difference. Hatfield Volkswagen, 1495 Auto Mall Drive off I-270 at Georgesville Road, 465-VW or HatfieldVW.com.
If you are looking for a different dining experience, then get ready. Coming soon, The Sultan. The Sultan, located at 1765 Bryce Road, is Central Ohio's #1 restaurant for authentic Turkish and Mediterranean cooking. Each menu item at this wonderful dining place is guaranteed to deliver delightful, jubilant satisfaction. The Sultan's delectable Adana and Iskender kebabs are a heaven-like encounter of culinary bliss. You will also love their delicately seasoned baby lamb chops. The Sultan also specializes in gourmet Greek salads as well as scrumptious gyros. You can also get started with amazing hummus as well as delicious falafel wraps and shawarma wraps. In addition, you have to try the Sultan's fresh homemade dessert made by hand from scratch. You need to have this exquisite dining experience. The Sultan will be available for business in the next few days. For more information, call or stop by the Sultan at 1765 Bryce Road, just north of the intersection of Bryce and Livingston. The Sultan, the ultimate in Turkish and Mediterranean cuisine.
This is Nikki Ransom Alfred, host of Real Talk, and you are invited to the wedding event of the year. Join us for the Celebration of Love mass wedding happening on December 12, 2012, and be a witness to dozens of couples all being married at the same time in a winter wonderland wedding at the historical King Arts Complex. For more information on our wedding event or how your nuptials can make history, visit 1212celebration.com. That's www.1212celebration.com.
Who has great eats? Burgers, sandwiches, salads, even mozzarella sticks. Who serves up over 100 distinctively different beers, including crafted? Where can you catch a game on several strategically placed big screen TVs and never miss a play? Where can you go to have a business lunch, a party, or just a fun happy hour? Nasty Sports Bar and Grill in Hilliard. Mention Talktainment Radio and get a buck off any burger on the menu. Nasty Sports Bar and Grill, 4561 Scioto Darby Road in Hilliard. Online at nastyshilliard.com.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
Face paint, sweater vest, Buckeye Extra Game Day Plus. Pick up Buckeye Extra Game Day Plus football Saturdays only in the Columbus Dispatch. Call 1-877-7-DISPATCH to subscribe.
I'm Tammy. I got your lucky number, heard exclusively on Conversate in the AM at 11 a.m. Mondays and Fridays. Make sure you tune in for your lucky number. Punch in Talktainmentradio.com and click on Listen Live and listen for your lucky number.
We've got the power.
Justice is better than racism.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard. I'm Brother Kahari, sitting in every week with Mr. Fuller. Alongside me today, I have a special guest, Donella Radix, and she does a show called Spit It, and that airs every Sunday on TalkTainmentRadio.com. You get various times on Sunday. She can tell you a little bit more about her show. But she's sitting in with Mr. Fuller, and of course, Donella has looked at the issues resolving around race, and Mr. Fuller kind of morphed into, Donella, this whole question of homosexuality and how it's being used from a racial standpoint to set up racial confusion and sexual confusion, which leads people into chaos and you know, totally unable to function effectively and do anything effectively. We're just totally confused and chaotic, and more of the same, and even escalated at a higher level. It's kind of interesting that Mr. Fuller went in that direction, because some statistics just came out where they said the number of homosexuals in the country that they could verify was 3%. I don't know if you saw that. But what was more telling, supposedly, and this is from the Telegraph and some of these other websites, was that the highest number, guess who had the highest number?
Black people.
That's right. And so Mr. Fuller is right on the beam there. It said that black people had the highest number of homosexuals, and said that black people were more adept of being homosexual than white people were. Now, wait a minute. Where do you see what I'm saying? It's like, wait a minute. Who's doing the counting? Where is this coming from? Why is this being put out there? Et cetera, et cetera. Because then you lock into the HIV/AIDS thing and that association and a whole host of things that come with that. Mr. Fuller, were you aware of that information concerning the so-called number of homosexuals in the country?
No, I had not heard that at all.
Yeah, it just came out about a week
But I had
ago.
the suspicion right from the beginning years ago, because it came along. I started noticing it about 1972, and I talked about it at that time, long before many people were mentioning it at all.
Well,
I said, there's something strange going on.
I remember when you came to Dayton, first came to Dayton. That's when I first met you in 1975. I remember in your presentation, see, I remember things that are very vivid. I remember in your presentation, even back then, because I took notes and I save all my notes. I remember when I went through my notes, I remember you talked about that way back then. So I know when you say 72, 75 would be right in line with where you were going. The other thing, Mr. Fuller, that I find interesting about this campaign is, as far back as I can remember, since maybe LBJ, not one word, Donella or Mr. Fuller, has been mentioned about black people. Not one word. And yet, some of the data coming out, if this data is to be believed, we are, economically speaking, in worse shape than we were during the Great Depression. And yet, not one word is being spoken about us by either candidate. Donnell, I'm going to get your perspective on that.
Well, I just wanted to jump backwards for 1 second and just, I wanted to, reiterate even though I hadn't heard, the statistics about, who is gay in this country.
I don't use the word gay. I say homosexual.
Okay, look, homosexual.
But anyway, if you want to use the word gay, use it.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
But you have to define what you mean by it.
Just a label. I'll use
words have power. Now you on with Mr. Fuller here.
Okay, and I'm going to use homosexual and be happy to use it, and I'm going to move on. I do understand that. In just what Dr. Fuller was talking about, how the chaos, and you were also talking about it too, Kahari, about how when you have a group of people who are in chaos and who are hurting and who are wounded, we transcend, natural inclinations and go for something that appears to be comfort. And I do believe that what we are experiencing, Kahari, personally, I do believe that there are people who are naturally homosexual. I do believe that personally. But however, what we're seeing in our communities definitely are people who are engaging in these relationships, which may not be natural, or something that they would engage in if they were not, within an environment where there's a lot of hurt, chaos, violence, neglect, and everything that tends to go on and drive people in these directions. So just wanted to say, I believe the statistic, I'm not doubtful of it. And as far as, no one mentioning black people in this election, when you start to bring up black people, it starts to get confusing. It starts to get too controversial. It's like opening a can of worms that no one wants to deal with, black or white politician.
So what happens is that the conditions get overlooked and they get worse and worse and worse and worse until the people themselves become invisible. Mr. Fuller, reminds me of something you used to say, how black people can walk down the street and they can do all kind of gyrations, but nobody ever sees them. It's like they're invisible. They don't matter. Mr. Fuller, let me get your thoughts on that.
Yes, I agree with that. I mean, because the whole idea in the refinement stage of white supremacy is to take the position that white supremacy is going out of business and/or has gone out of business and/or never was in business. That's what they'll be saying. They'll be saying people are seeing things. Racism. I mean, come on, stop playing the race card. You start hearing about that as far back as about 10 years ago, and that's the label that was given. And when the racists get ready to make a move, racists meaning the white supremacists who are running the entire world system of white supremacy, and they are the dominant people on the planet, politically and in every other area of activity. These are the most powerful and the smartest people on the planet. White people who believe in racism are the dominant and smartest people on the entire planet. So being the dominant and the smartest people on the entire planet, they determine what all of the non-white people are going to do or not going to do in every area of activity, because that's their specialty. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. Unless I am making a huge mistake, which means that someone else is dominant. But I don't see any evidence of that. Who is that someone else? I'm not talking about all white people, but I'm talking about the white people who believe in mistreating people based on color are the smartest and the dominant force among people everywhere on this planet.
So, Mr. Fuller, does that mean that black people are going to have to disappear? Even though we might exist, does that mean in the consciousness that we have to disappear? Because it would appear that that's what's happening right now.
No, what it is, black people are not supposed to talk like racism exists. That's the refinement stage of racism. Black people are supposed to. That's why you have black people in the last, I'll say, 20 years, particularly all over the world, suddenly become black faces up front. Nelson Mandela, you can just go down the long list, and Albert Luthuli before him, and just all of the people. I mean, a statue to Martin Luther King, Gandhi being resurrected, and on and on and on. Black people everywhere, a black president out of nowhere. Boom, you got a black president just right out of nowhere. President Obama just came out of nowhere. Almost everybody, black people were almost, the majority of black people, including myself, were almost blindsided by that.
Yep,
absolutely.
But these decisions are made by white supremacists. And so you say, why all of a sudden all the black faces up front? When it used to be black faces to the back, everywhere. You don't even want to see them. You don't want to see them in the movies. Not even in the background, not even on a city street. If you look at the old black and white movies, the ones that before they had quote unquote color, you on a city street, you wouldn't see any black people when they hired extras in the movie sets. There were no black people even walking up and down the street, even though you would see them in reality. But now, black people are all over the movies. They're taking over, you might say. You can't have a movie without having a substantial number of black people, rather than just a token non-white person. I mean, Lone Ranger and Tonto and the white man with the black sidekick. They've kind of gotten away from that. Now you have black people all over the movies, all over the television set, on every talk show, presenting the news, and black people everywhere. But these decisions were made by the white supremacists. Why were these decisions made? Because we're going to do it on a percentage basis, just like in the beginning of this program, the Godfather approach. We are going to keep it respectable. Racism will be respectable, but it won't even be recognized as racism. Just like the drugs, keep it respectable, as the character in The Godfather said at the table with Don Corleone and Barzinas and whatnot. We're going to keep it respectable. It's the same way. That's the battle cry of the white supremacists now in 2012. Keep it respectable. and that is make it look like it doesn't exist. But at the same time, there will be, for every black face up front, there will be millions and millions and millions of black people who will be completely deprived of everything that has any kind of decency to it or any kind of material gain in a constructive manner.
And that's exactly what we see happening. We see it. We don't hear our name. We don't see our names. We're suffering in silence. It's like you set up a suffering in silence cult, because if you admit that this exists, then you must be delusional. You must be crazy. But in fact, it does exist. And the data, by any objectionable manner, shows that we are worse off today, data-wise, lifestyle-wise, than we were in the Great Depression.
Yes.
I mean, and yet there is no help being proposed at any level. I mean, I've scoured this stuff to find out if anybody's got anything on the table. There's nothing on the table. There is no help coming. So the question becomes, and I like what Mr. Fuller has often said. He said those people who need help the most should be getting help the most. But it doesn't appear that that's going to be the case. We got more to come. Danella Brackford sitting in with us with Mr. Neely Fuller. I'm Brother Kahari. Stay right there. More to come on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
Keys to Victory, a financial empowerment event. Financial strategies to thrive, not just survive. Respected experts and professionals will share practical information and insights as they demonstrate keys to financial victory. To register for this free event, contact Sanctuary Law Institute at 614-937-7974 or projectjubilee@gmail.com. Space is limited. Register now. Saturday, November 17th, 3 p.m. Where? Trinity United Church of Christ, 1180 Shanley Drive. Learn about keys to victory, credit rehab, dealing with creditors, lenders, understanding child support. Register now. Saturday, November 17th, 3 p.m. For more information, contact Sanctuary Law Institute at 614-937-7974 or projectjubilee@gmail.com. Space is limited. Register now.
There are Volkswagen dealers, and there's Hatfield Volkswagen, featuring the 2013 Jetta for only $159 a month, and Motor Trend's Car of the Year, the 2013 Passat. Our service staff keeps your Volkswagen performing at its best, whether it's our carefree maintenance program or our 30-minute express oil change. And Hatfield Volkswagen offers fine pre-owned cars starting at $5,000. Mention Talktainment Radio for a free car wash. Experience the difference. Hatfield Volkswagen, 1495 Auto Mall Drive off I-270 and Georgesville Road, 465-BWBW or HatfieldBW.com.
If you are looking for a different dining experience, then get ready. Coming soon, The Sultan. The Sultan, located at 1765 Bryce Road, is Central Ohio's #1 restaurant for authentic Turkish and Mediterranean cooking. Each menu item at this wonderful dining place is guaranteed to deliver delightful, jubilant satisfaction. The Sultan's delectable Adana and Iskender kebabs are a heaven-like encounter of culinary bliss. You will also love their delicately seasoned baby lamb chops. The Sultan also specializes in gourmet Greek salads as well as scrumptious gyros. You can also get started with amazing hummus as well as delicious falafel wraps and shawarma wraps. In addition, you have to try the Sultan's fresh homemade dessert made by hand from scratch. You need to have this exquisite dining experience. The Sultan will be available for business in the next few days. For more information, call or stop by the Sultan at 1765 Bryce Road, just north of the intersection of Bryce and Livingston. The Sultan, the ultimate in Turkish and Mediterranean cuisine.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
I'm Tammy. I Got Your Lucky Number, heard exclusively on Conversating the AM at 11:11 a.m. Mondays and Fridays. Make sure you tune in for your lucky number. Punch in TalkTeamAtRadio.com and click on Listen Live and listen for your lucky number.
We've got the power.
Justice is better than racism.
This is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTeamAtRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard. Joining me is Donnell Braddock, and we have Mr. Fuller live every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, exclusively on TalkTeamAtRadio.com. And if you missed the show, you can always go to your programs, and then you can click on compensatory concept, and then you can get podcasts of the shows that you missed. Podcasts are simply a rebroadcast that you can hear shows that you might have missed. Donella, any thoughts? Donella does a show called Spirit. It's aired every Sunday, and it's a dynamite show. Donella, any thoughts on what we've been talking about?
Well, actually, I have a question, and you can rein me in if you want. But, Kahari, you and I had a conversation a little while ago where you really kind of opened my mind to the extent of living in a white supremacist, dominated society, how our thoughts are completely programmed, and we can't even imagine what our thoughts would be like, what our actions, our behavior, what our culture would be like if we were living in a society where we were actually first-class citizens. And so you kind of blew my mind with that one. And so I just wanted to ask, if possible, I wanted to ask Mr. Fuller, what was it, and you can, on any nation on earth, I'm kind of thinking Africa right now, the continent of Africa perhaps, but did we have any hope, or do we have any hope of witnessing a society in which black people are truly first-class citizens and define their own lifestyle and destiny? Do we have any hope of seeing that in our lifetime?
Mr. Fuller?
Yes. I was hearing some interference there.
Don't worry about it.
I don't know what that was.
That's probably a bit of phone problem. But were you able to hear her?
Yes, I heard something about what she was saying.
Okay,
Yeah,
Donnella,
okay.
you want to repeat it?
Yeah, just briefly, like I'm thinking of with the assassination of Gaddafi. And to a lot of people, it seemed like he was actually, there was a hope that his country would actually bring forth a revolution in that black people would control their own destiny. Now, I don't know, but I'm just wondering, is that true? And if not, is there any country on earth or any nation or society on earth where we have a hope of seeing a black-dominated country, black-dominated society in our lifetime?
Where there's justice produced?
Where there's justice produced, is it happening anywhere?
Mr. Fuller?
Can it?
No, not under the system of white supremacy. That's why we have to look at the white supremacists do not belong to a country, nor do they have a country. They are a country. They are a world system. You can't even call them a country. They are a system of people. They, in all areas of activity, the white people who have decided to be white supremacists have become the dominant people on the entire planet. So there's no such thing as a country in the system of white supremacy. That's an illusion. That really is an illusion. People will call themselves a country if they are non-white, but they are not countries. They are not cities. They are not even communities. There's no such thing as a black community in a system of white supremacy. We're all prisoners of war. There's a war going on, and it's a war against the non-white people of the planet. And that war has been won so far. I say so far. I put the war in quotes because I say so far, because the war isn't really won until everybody just stops fighting. And then whoever the victor is getting no opposition from the victims. And so therefore the war is declared over. But as long as someone is resistant, the war is not over. But so far, all of the battles have been lost by the non-white people. We take a few steps forward, and then we get thrown back, and then a few steps forward, and then thrown back. But the war continues. So you can't say that you have won any of the battles until the war is over. That's the only way you can measure that, by using logic. So there's no such thing as a country of non-white people or a community of non-white people in the system of white supremacy. We'll all look at it as the world is just a great big prison, a racial prison. And the people who are classified as black, brown, red, yellow, tan, beige are all subject to the white supremacists in that system, 24 hours a day, in every area of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Completely subject to the white supremacists. And it's only when we realize that and start, as individuals, start saying, well, first of all, we have to come up with a system, that's what it takes, that counters the entire system of racism. And each individual has to do this every day where he or she may be. Now, you talked about Mr. Gaddafi. Well, now, we'll get the word straight first. First of all, I think that he's classified as non-white, but I'm not sure because the white supremacists do the classifying. See, that just goes to show you how powerful they are. They determine who's white, and they determine who's non-white. And that's where a lot of the confusion is, too. Because if you don't get the classification straight in the beginning, everything else is chaos anyway. But every now and then, the white supremacists themselves will say that a person who you may perceive as non-white is considered to be white. Why? Because the white supremacist says, well, the person was non-white last week, but I'm saying that they're white this week. And you say, well, how can you say that? Say, because I am supreme. I do the classifying. Mm-hmm. You dark-skinned people do not determine what classification you have. If you're in Brazil, you may be of one classification, and if you move to Minnesota, you may be another classification, depending on what I say you are.
Right, like the honorary white status across South America.
Absolutely, and like it was under so-called apartheid.
Right.
In Africa. And who set this up? White supremacists, white people who believe in white supremacy. And say, now you see it, now you don't. And you say, well, I'm looking at the person, or this person is my aunt, or my cousin, or my father, and he's always been black. Say, well, he was black last Tuesday, but not today. Why? Because I said so, and I got the muscle to back it up. And you have no voice, not even in your classification. I say that you're Indian, or part Indian, or the white supremacists, many of them now saying, when it's convenient for them, that they are Indian. They do that. How can you be white and red at the same time? And I'm not talking about the slang expression redneck, which is a different thing altogether. But the white supremacists will, with a straight face, when they get ready to tap into some oil or something like that,
right,
say, "Oh,
yes,
I'm Indian now. You know,
absolutely.
I'm Indian. Yes, right, I'm Indian." You say, "Well, I thought you were a white man." Well, I'm saying that I'm Indian. Well, how can you be white and Indian at the same time? Well, you figure it out. Meanwhile, I'm taking all oil.
Right, and the free medical benefits and the government stipends and all that goes along with it.
And many of the people who are classified as Indian are appalled at this type of behavior. But that's the way the white supremacists do. Now you see it, now you don't. They'll do this with racial classifications. They'll do it with sexual classifications. They'll do it with any kind of classifications because they simply say that what they say goes. What they say is always right, regardless, just like all royalists have always done down through the ages. The king is always correct. The king can do no wrong. Even when the king is wrong, the king is right. And so The people who set up the system of white supremacists say that white is right. Even when they're wrong, they're right. So they'll say anything.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Fuller. Do you believe the average, if there's such a term as average, that the walking around daily black people, do you really believe they believe that a system of white supremacy exists in the year 2012?
Absolutely not. The average black person has been taught, we've been systematically taught, that a white supremacist is a guy who wears a hood and marches down the street saying, use an N-word all day. I mean, and he's got on a robe and he's burning a cross. And that's a white supremacist. And the other white people who are white supremacists wearing a suit and tie will stand right next to a black person and say, there they go, those Ku Kluxers. These are the people who are causing all of the racial problems in the world. There they go, all 6 of them. And if we just keep those 6 under control, everything will just be rosy. Everybody will be happy, black and white together. I'm standing right next to you. But those people that I'm pointing at, going down that avenue with all those swastikas on and with those hoods on, those are the white supremacists. Let's see, how many of them is it? Let's see, it looks like it's about 12 or 15. These are the ones who are causing all of the racial problems in the world. Now, so if we keep our eye on them, and you help me to do it, we won't have any racial problems at all.
And
that person standing right next to you is the most skilled of the white supremacists, most likely.
Yeah, I was going to say, because even like a couple of years ago, remember that, quote, white supremacist who blew his nuts off in the barn trying to accumulate ammunition? They're not even all that bright. And like you said, there's only about 13 or 15 of them. So, but we don't tend to think like that. That's so true.
Yes, we've been taught that that's what a white supremacist is. That's what we're taught in the schools and whatnot. Oh, the Ku Klux Klan, the Nazi Party. Oh, yeah, how much? Well, it must be about at least 300 of them by now, but we're keeping an eye on them. And if we just keep an eye on them and keep them in jail and keep them harassed and all like that, then there will be no racism rearing its ugly head.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Fuller. Do you think this election, with Barack Obama being president, has this opened more eyes about the existence of racism, or has it closed more eyes?
It's closed more eyes.
You think
it's closed, which is exactly what it was designed to do. Mr. Obama could not have become president without the white supremacists making that as a part of their plan, because it's a world long-range plan. And the whole idea is to have him do what? He will go down in history as being what? A black president, the first black president, who was an assassin-in-chief.
Yep.
Yes. In other words, he's real good at putting hits on people and bragging about it, which is what they taught him to do. We're going to allow you got a lot of plans, you're a nice fella and all like that, but the only thing we're going to allow you to do is kill people, put hits on people. That's what you're going to be known for. You're not going to be known for anything else, because we are not going to allow you to do anything else. Everything else that you come up with, we're going to veto it. And this is how it's going down. And even though, and I'm going to say this outright, I'm going to vote for President Obama because I voted for him the first time. Mm-hmm. Why do I vote for him? Because I just want young black people to get accustomed, because they're not accustomed to this, to seeing a black person at least hold a title.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And also, over a period of time, they will realize that holding titles is not the key to getting things done.
I think
they'll realize that. But see, they never would have realized that until they actually have seen it. Wow. So we'll let that transpire. It's just a learning process. But as far as getting any benefits from President Obama, or getting any benefits from President Romney if he becomes under that title, Governor Romney, if he becomes president, you're not going to get any benefits either way, because the white supremacists have already made their decisions years ago about who's going to get what. And they have decided that black people are just going to be under the refined system of white supremacy, and they are going to be confused and going at each other like the young black people out here. Their only ambition is to kill each other or to look at each other with disdain. We don't have any other plan. Just look at the young black people who are out here now. They don't have any other plan other than that. And that's a plan that's been handed down through the ages. Black people really look forward to looking each other up. That's all we do. And we allowed to get off from work and have a little space. We go doing what? Looking for other black people. And then when we find other black people, we trade a few pleasantries to start off with, high fives and handshakes, and then we start getting in arguments about petty things, and then we wind up going at each other. That's our tradition. That's our entire culture. That's the way the white supremacists want it.
Mr. Fuller, thank you once again for the compensatory concept. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Donella, thank you.
Thank you.
You got the power. Radio, the way it should be heard.